Chapter 14. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many levels of causation, but nothing escapes the law of destiny. Summum. The great sixth summum principle, the principle of cause and effect, embodies the idea that law pervades the universe, that nothing happens by chance. Chance is merely a descriptive term indicating that a cause exists but is of unknown origin or not perceived. All phenomena is continuous without break or exception. The principle of cause and effect underlies all scientific thought, ancient and modern. While many and varied disputes between the many disciplines have since arisen, they have been principally about the details of the operations of the principle, and sometimes about the meaning of certain words. The underlying principle of cause and effect has been accepted as correct by all scientists and metaphysicians. To believe otherwise would be to take the phenomena of the universe from the domain of law and order and relegate it to the control of the imaginary, or a circumstance which humans call chance. A little consideration will prove that there can be no such agent as pure chance. Webster defines the word chance as the happening of events without apparent cause. In a sense, one would be saying that an event is outside of the law, beyond the laws of cause and effect. How can something act in the phenomenal universe independent of the laws, order, and the continuity of the universe? Such a thing would be entirely independent of the universe and therefore superior to it. Yet there is nothing outside of summum belonging to such a law, because summum is the law in itself. There is no room for something outside of and independent of law. The existence of such a thing would render all natural laws ineffective and would plunge the universe into chaotic disorder and lawlessness. Careful examination will show that what you call chance is merely an expression relating to obscure causes, causes that you cannot perceive, causes that you cannot understand. The word chance is derived from the word meaning to fall, as the falling of dice, which approximates the idea that the fall of the dice is merely a happening unrelated to any cause. This is the sense in which the term is generally used, but upon closer examination, it can be determined that there is no chance whatsoever concerned with the fall of the dice. Each time a die falls and displays a certain number, it obeys a law, as infallible as that which governs the revolution of the planets around the sun. Behind the fall of the die are causes or chains of causes extending further than the mind could trace. They may include the position of the die in the hand, the amount of muscular energy existed in the throw, the condition of the table, etc. All are causes, the effect of which may be perceived. Yet beyond these seen causes are chains of unseen preceding causes, all having a bearing upon the number on the die which comes up. If a die is tossed a great number of times, the count of each number that comes up will turn out to be nearly equal. That is, an equal number of 1 spots, 2 spots, 3 spots, etc. Toss a coin in the air and it may come down either heads or tails, but make a sufficient number of tosses and the heads and tails will about even up. This is the operation of the law of averages. Both the averages and the single toss come under the law of cause and effect. If you were able to examine the preceding causes, it would be clear that it was simply impossible for the die to fall other than it did under the circumstances and at that time. Given the same causes, the same results will follow. There is always a cause and a because to every event. Nothing ever happens without a cause, or rather a chain of causes. Some confusion exists by those considering this principle due to the fact that they are unable to explain how one thing could cause another. That is, how one thing is the creator of a second thing. As a matter of fact, no thing ever causes or creates another thing. Cause and effect deals only with events. An event is that which comes, arrives, or happens as a result or consequence of some preceding event. No event creates another event, but is merely a preceding link in the great orderly chain of Summum. The events are the bonds between cause and effect, the force and energy of creation. There is continuity between all events, precedent, consequent, and subsequent. There is relation existing between everything that has gone before and everything that follows. A stone is dislodged from the mountainside and crashes through a roof of a cabin in the valley below. At first you may regard this as a chance effect or an act of God. But when you examine the matter, you find a great chain of causes behind it. In the first place, there was the rain which softened the earth, supporting the stone and allowing it to fall. Beside the rain was the influence of sun and wind, which gradually chiseled the piece of rock from a larger piece. Then there were the causes which led to the formation of the mountain, its upheaval by convulsions of nature, and so on ad infinitum. Then you might follow the weather patterns that produced the rain, and the materials that the roof was composed of. In short, you would find yourself involved in a mesh of cause and effect, from which you would soon strive to disentangle yourself. Just as a human has 2 parents and 4 grandparents, and 8 great-grandparents, and 16 great-great-grandparents, and so on, until the number of ancestors run into many millions, so is it with the number of causes behind even the most trifling event or phenomena. Consider the passage of a tiny speck of soot before your eye. It is not an easy matter to trace a bit of soot back to the early period of the planet's history, when it formed a part of a large tree. Follow it from the tree which was converted into coal, to the coal which fueled a fire, to the speck of soot now passing before your eyes on its way to other adventures. A mighty chain of events, causes, and effects brought the speck of soot to its present condition. It is but one of a chain of events which will produce other events, continuing on hundreds of years from now, and including the inspiration for this next description. Let us examine the task of rewriting these lines for this day and age. Utilizing a computer and a word processing program, we input, convert, and store data on a floppy disk. The floppy disk is inserted into a typesetting computer. The typesetting computer produces and prints out the set type. Proofreaders then perform their job. The editing copy is sent to the printer. The printer prints the book. The book is distributed to bookstores. You see this book in a bookstore and buy it. You read it, and it arouses certain thoughts in your mind and that of others reading it, which in turn affect others, and so on and on and on. The events continue beyond the ability of humans to calculate further. Just ponder for a moment. If a certain man had not met a certain woman in the dim period of the Stone Age, you who are now reading these lines would not be here in the form that you now inhabit. Every thought you think, every act you perform, has its direct and indirect results which fit into the great chain of cause and effect. In consideration of free will, remember the law of paradox. On one hand, you do make choices and direct your lives on a conscious level, but the direction of those choices are a result of cause and effect. and the partially wise become disillusioned by their refusal of the acceptance of destiny. The Summum teachers that are humankind, the Summum teachings that our humankind is both free and yet bound by necessity, depending upon the meaning of the terms and the level at which the matter is examined. That is because the further the creation is from the center, the more bound it is. As it comes closer to the center, the more free it becomes. Now, I'm going to interject something here. I'm thinking as I'm reading this of the Mandela effect, which seems to defy the law of cause and effect, because things are changing that we know are a change, and we wonder what was the cause that made the effect that we call the Mandela effect. So keep that in mind as you read this. Maybe we'll find the answer here. I don't know, though. Okay, I'll continue now. The majority of humans are more or less slaves of heredity and environment and exhibit very little freedom. They are swayed by the opinions and customs of the exterior world, and also by their own emotions, feelings, moods, etc. They show very little mastery of self. They indignantly protest this assertion, saying, "Why, I certainly am free to act and do as I please. I do just what I want to do." They fail to explain where the want to and the as I please come from. What makes them want to do this, that, or anything? The Summa Master can change these pleases and wants into the will to will. Instead of being moved because some feeling, mood, emotion, or environmental suggestion aroused a tendency or a desire with them to do so, they are the masters of their desire, not a slave to their passion. The majority of humans are manipulated by heredity and internal moods, desires, etc., not to mention outside influences such as the suggestions and will of others stronger than themselves. They are carried along without resistance on their part or the exercise of their will. Moved like pawns on the chessboard of life, they play their parts and are laid aside after the game is over. But the masters, knowing the rules of the game, rise above the level of material life. By placing themselves in touch with the higher powers of their nature, they dominate their own moods, characters, qualities, and vibration, as well as the environment surrounding them. Thus they become movers in the game instead of pawns, causes instead of effects. The Summa Masters do not escape the causation on the higher levels, but become one with the higher laws. They form a conscious part of the law rather than being its blind instrument. While they serve on the higher levels, they rule on the material level. On all levels of existence, the law is always in operation and ever in evidence. Look at the phenomena of the deep trance medium who gives guidance by allowing its body to be used by a disembodied earthbound spirit. This is due to the cycle of the law of cause and effect. There is the want and desire of the disembodied earthbound spirit to participate in the embodied game of the material level. There is the want and desire of the medium who is being used to channel other entities to participate in the game of the spiritual ego. Just as events in life follow the train of cause and effect, so do the events of death. Leverage an understanding of cause and effect as it pertains to your eventual death. Death is a transitory period between this life and the next. It takes you on a path whose direction is determined by the condition of your mind. Your mental state at the time of your death will determine the outcome of events as you make the transition. As a man thinketh, so is he. The last thought you think before you leave your body determines the path you follow to your next life. Normally, death leaves you alone in distressed thought, fending for yourself as you begin to move through bewildering surroundings. The familiar territory of your bodily life is gone, your path beset and dictated by fear. But if someone were to preserve your body in such a manner that it acted as a haven for your essence, and if someone were to provide communication and guidance to your being, the transition stands to be glorious. This is why mummification and transference became so vital during this critical movement of the essence. When practiced correctly within the laws of destiny, they set a stage that empowers you to negotiate forces and transition to a life of the greatest realms. The transition that occurs at death is the only time you can really make a momentous change in your destiny. But it is during the life that you prepare for the movement. How you fare during your transition is greatly affected by the strength of your will or lack thereof. Your will determines your ability to remain focused on the optimal direction and whether you will be deterred by distractions, or whether you will be. Just as there are distractions in life, there are distractions in death. The opportunity to develop your will is afforded to you in life when you have the chance to learn and practice meditation. When you can become initiated into the esoteric discipline of an ideal meditation, you have the definitive tool to build the will of your essence. The strength you acquire in life will play a significant role during death. There is no such thing as chance. Everything is governed by universal law. The infinite number of laws are but manifestations of the one great law, the law which is Summum. It is true that the mind of Summum, not a sparrow drops unnoticed. In the mind of Summum, not a sparrow drops unnoticed. Even the hairs on your head are numbered, just as scriptures have said. There is nothing outside the law. Nothing happens contrary to it. Yet do not make the mistake of supposing that humankind is but a blind automaton. Far from that. The Summum teachings are that humankind may use law to overcome laws, and that the higher will always prevails against the lower. At last you will reach the stage in which you seek refuge in the law itself and laugh the phenomenal laws away. Catch this esoteric meaning. Okay, next chapter is gender. Gender is everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principle. Gender manifest on all levels. Summum. The great seventh Summa principle, the principle of gender, embodies the idea that there is gender manifest in everything. The masculine and feminine principle are ever present and active in all phases of phenomena, on each and every level of life. Point your attention to the fact that gender in the summum sense and sex in the ordinary accepted use of the term are similar but different in scope. The word gender is derived from the Latin root meaning to beget, to procreate, to generate, to create, to produce. Gender is a result of the copulation of the two grand opposites, nothing and possibility. A moment's consideration will show that the word has a much broader and more general meaning than the term sex. Sex refers to the physical distinctions between male and female living organisms. Sex also refers to copulation, intercourse, coitus, and in this context, every event is a form of sex, an in and out relationship between two things or opposing points bonding in the same vibrational field or scale. Creation manifests when balance is perfected between the opposites. By applying higher law against lower laws, the creation becomes divine. Summum. This principle of Summum explains that by applying higher law to what humankind regards as sex, the sexual union can become divine. The sexual union of the physical body and mind, immersed in the vibration of spiritual copulation, will result in the procreation of spiritual offspring. True joy and ecstasy is experienced only in this divine creation. The office of gender is sorely that of creating, producing, generating, etc., and its manifestations are visible on every level of phenomena. It is somewhat difficult to produce proofs of this along scientific lines because science has not yet recognized this principle as a universal application. Still, some proofs are forthcoming from scientific sources. There is a distinct promulgation of the principle of gender among the subatomic particles, such as electrons, the interactions of which form the basis of the chemical bond, as your science now knows it. The formation of an ionic compound, such as sodium chloride, common table salt, is caused by the attraction between oppositely charged particles. That is to say, when sodium gives up a negatively charged electron to chlorine, the sodium becomes positively charged. And when chlorine accepts the electron from sodium, the chlorine becomes negatively charged. And when chlorine accepts, the compound sodium chloride results because the sodium plus and the chlorine minus ions are strongly attracted to one another by their opposite charges. Thus, two individuals come together and create or generate something that is greater than either one of them could be by themselves. It takes the joining of two to make one, Summum. The most ancient of Summum teachings have always identified the masculine principle of gender with the positive and the feminine with the so-called negative points of electricity, possibility, and nothing. There is a point to be made regarding this identification. The public mind has formed an entirely erroneous impression regarding the qualities of the so-called negative point of electrified and magnetized matter. The word positive has taken on the meaning of something good and strong as compared to negative, which has the connotation of being bad or weak. Nothing is further from the real facts of electrical phenomena. The so-called negative pole of the battery is really the pole in and by which the generation or production of new forms and energies are manifested. There is nothing negative about it. The best scientific authorities now use the word cathode in place of negative. The word cathode comes from the Greek root meaning descent, the path of generation, etc. From the cathode pole emerges the swarm of electrons. The cathode or negative pole is the mother principle of electrical phenomena. You may substitute the word feminine for the old term negative when speaking of the point of activity. A feminine particle becomes detached from, or rather leaves, a masculine particle and starts on a new career. It actively seeks a union with a masculine particle, being urged by the natural impulse to create new forms of matter or energy, events. This detachment and uniting, what the chemists term bond making and bond breaking, forms the basis for the greater part of the activities of the chemical world. When the feminine particle unites with a masculine particle, a certain process is begun. The feminine particles vibrate, resonate rapidly under the influence of the masculine energy, and the circle rapidly around the masculine, resulting in the birth of a new entity. The new entity is composed of the union of the masculine and feminine, the positively charged sodium and the negatively charged chlorine. After the union is complete, a new entity emerges and becomes a separate composition. Sodium chloride, having certain properties, but no longer manifesting the property of free electricity. The loss and gain of the feminine electrons by atoms is called ionization. These electrons are the most active workers in nature's field. From their unions or combinations arise the varied phenomena of electricity, attraction, repulsion, chemical affinity or resonance, and the reverse. All this activity originates from the operation of the principle of gender on the level of energy. The role of the masculine principle seems to be that of directing a certain inherent energy toward the feminine principle, and thus initiating the creative processes. The feminine principle is the one always doing the active creative work, and this is so on all levels. Each principle is incapable of operative energy without the assistance of the other. In some life forms, the two principles are combined within one organism. For that matter, everything in the organic world manifests both genders. There is always the masculine present in the feminine form and the feminine present in the masculine form. The Summa teachings include much regarding the operation of the two principles of gender in the production and manifestation of various forms of energy, etc. It is not necessary here to recount the chemical laws of attraction and repulsion between atoms, chemical affinity or resonance, and the attraction or cohesion between molecules. These phenomena are well known and no need for extended comment. Take into consideration that all of these laws are manifestations of the gender principle. In addition, the Summa teachings assert that the very law of gravitation, that attraction by reason of which all particles and bodies of matter in the universe tend toward each other, is but another manifestation of the principle of gender, which operates in the direction of attracting the masculine to the feminine energies and vice versa. This cannot be scientifically proven at this time, but examine the phenomena in the light of the Summa teachings on the subject and see if you have not a better working hypothesis than any offered by physical science. Submit all physical phenomena to the test and you will discern the principle of gender ever in evidence. And that. The next one will be the subject mental gender, chapter 16, but I won't read it because I'm now at 28 minutes and this is going to cut off any time. I don't think I got my answer from reading that about the Mandela effect, but how can something change